Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing the Reading My Country tag. I was tagged by Laurent Macquart from Reading with Macquart. So that was fun. The first time I'm ever tagged, so very exciting. Thank you. Reading My Country is a little bit difficult for me because so I was born and raised in the US, not US, US, but I was born to French parents, and I was born to parents who had immigrated to the US and had only been living in the US for 4 years. So I grew up not with a traditional American upbringing. At home, it was very much a French home. We spoke French language. Vacations were always spent in France. But obviously I still went to American school and did all those things. But my background is a little bit more varied than a traditional, than maybe if this video were done by someone who was born and raised in the US with a US family and things like that. But for the most part, this will be the US. And yeah, I am going to be talking about US and not France because I wasn't, I didn't grow up in France, so I didn't have to read French classics for school or anything like that. I did that on my own. So yeah, that answers the first question as to what country I'm going to talk about, US. So this is where the second question becomes difficult because it's, what is your favorite childhood book from your country? So my parents, being from France, they weren't familiar with traditional American kids literature. And at the same time, because we were in the US, we didn't have access to traditional French childhood literature. So I don't really even know where I came to know of the books that I ended up reading. They're not the traditional books. I didn't read The Hungry Caterpillar. I didn't read Where the Wild Things Are. Is that even American or is that Canadian? I don't even know, but it's famous. So I didn't read those books, and I didn't really read the French classics either. What I do remember reading, two things that I do remember reading, was the Berenstain Bears, which was just a bear family, and it's kind of like, yeah, it's just cute and quaint and nice. And then I remember reading Charlotte's Web, which is a chapter book, and I remember reading that because I remember my mom was a big reader, and so at night she would always go to her room and read in bed, and so I remember joining her in bed so I could read Charlotte's Web. But that's the only thing I remember. I didn't really read any of the famous classics from the US. I don't really know what they are, because I've never had to really be familiar with them. So the third question, what is a book from your country that you read in school? So I decided to go with high school. And US school, we actually read a big mix, probably half American, half books from England. So, we do read Shakespeare, we do read, oh my gosh, what are the books from England that we read? Books like Wuthering Heights, Jane Eyre, things like that. We read those, but since it's from the US, I wrote down the list of my favorite books that we read while I was in school, and then some of my least favorite books. So let's start with the positive. So we read both Black Boy and Native Son by Richard A. Wright, and those books are fantastic, absolutely beautiful. I really enjoyed Bless Me Ultima by Rudolfo Anaya, which is like this famous like Chicano, like Hispanic culture in the US book, which I absolutely adored. We read I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou, All the Pretty Horses by Cormac McCarthy, Frankenstein, which, oh my gosh, I absolutely love that book by Mary Shelley. And actually that book kind of frustrated me because they always give you the list of books you're going to read over the summer before you start the school year. And they're always like, don't procrastinate, read these over the summer. And everyone's like, yeah, right, like I'm actually going to do that. But with Frankenstein, I did. I read it before the summer, in the summer, before the school year. And I loved it. It was great. I mean, I sat down. I was visiting a friend in Washington, and they were tired, so they went to bed. But I wasn't tired at all, so I decided to just read it in the kitchen. And I just sat there and read the entire book in one sitting. I mean, it was fantastic. I was so engrossed. And I was annoyed because I was like, all right, I read the book, I'm prepared. Now I don't have to read it. And so we took the first quiz on Frankenstein, and I didn't know any of the answers because I was like, well, this is so stupid. Why did they make us read the book over the summer? And even if you do the homework, you can't answer the quiz because it's so specific. You're not going to remember those details. So I don't know. That's my little tangent. But yes, Frankenstein, I loved it. I did it up. So I loved it so much that it was not a problem in reading it again, so that I could actually answer the quizzes and do the homework and do the tests. Another book we read was Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. So that's very good. So we had my high school had a very good career. I mean, I was in a very good school district, very, very good school district. So my high school, we had a very big African American curriculum. So we read all the famous books, and they're all fantastic and so good. Now, in terms of the books that we read that I didn't like, John Knowles, A Separate Peace, hated. Chaim, Potok, Chosen, hated it. Nathaniel Hawthorne, Scarlet Letter, quite despised that one. F. Scott Fitzgerald, Great Gatsby, didn't hate it. But whenever I watch like YouTube videos now, they're like, oh, it's my favorite book, blah, 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 blah. I don't understand. Not my, yeah. So yeah, those are like examples of American books that I read in high school. So the next question is, what is a book set in your favorite area of your country? So for me, I'm from Texas, so I had to choose the obvious, my favorite book of all time, I think, probably now. Lyric McMurtry's Lonesome Dove. This book is beautiful, it's superb, it's brutal, it's cruel, it's all about human nature and the ebb and flows of human nature as it relates to actual nature, the nature of the American countryside. And this book is, wow, it's one of those books, I turned the last page and I wanted to start it all over again. It was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So this would be my favorite book, set in my favorite area of the country and just in general. This book is wonderful. Next question. What is a historical fiction book set in your country? So, I mean, a lot of American fiction is pretty much historical fiction. But To Kill a Mockingbird, very good book. Little Women, excellent. Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man. I loved that book. Unfortunately, I don't really remember the details. I just kind of remember the impression it left me. But, it's all about the black struggles in the U.S. And that book was just superb. So good. Again, as I mentioned before, Black Boy, Native Son, Bless Me, Ultima, those are all books that, have a very much a historical fiction feel to them. Which leads me to the next question of what is a classic book from your country? I mean, all the books I just mentioned previously. I mean, America compared to, say, if I were from France. Well, no, if I am from France, technically. If I were to be doing this video about France, I mean, I think there's a lot more of a separation between what is a classic book in the country and what is a historical fiction, things like that. But in the U.S., our history is so short that they're kind of the same thing. So any of the books I mentioned above are basically classic books from the U.S. What is a book from your country that you haven't but would like to read? So I went to my wish list to see which American books I have that I would like to purchase quite soon and read quite soon. And I have Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian. I have Bluebird by Attica Locke. Which is a sort of a kind of like Texas Ranger detective story that takes place in Texas. So that's, even though I don't read too much like detective novels and things like that, the fact that it was set in Texas and it seems like it's going to have a very dark plot behind it really piqued my interest. And it's a fairly new release. E.L. Doctorow's Welcome to Hard Times. I think that's going to be a great sort of a Western feel. That's going to be fantastic. I'm really looking forward to that one. And then finally, James Baldwin's Go Tell It to the Mountain. I haven't read any James Baldwin yet. The number of times I've been to a bookstore and almost picked up his books, and I'm just like, oh gosh, sounds absolutely beautiful, but do I want to read something so depressing right now? I don't know. So I've like, although I still really want to read them, I have to decide whether or not I want to be incredibly depressed or not. But yeah, so those are some of the books I would like to read but haven't yet, but will probably be eventually purchased since they're on my wish list. What are some of your favorite authors or books from your country? So, Lonesome Dove. Yeah. I mean, this could have been like an answer to almost every single question in this video, other than, books that I read in school. But I decided to try and be a little bit more diverse. But yeah, Lonesome Dove, Lonesome Dove, Lonesome Dove, Lonesome Dove, Lonesome Dove. Pick it up. And yeah, so I started reading the rest of the tetralogy, which this is a part of. And then I read another one, actually that will be in my wrap up this month. So yeah, Lyric McMurtry is just, he creates characters from the very first page. You feel like you've known them for years already. The way he just sucks you in with his characters is wow. I've never seen such a quality in an author. It's superb. But other books, other authors, Cormac McCarthy, I quite like. Cormac McCarthy is a strange author for me because like, he's not a favorite, but he's an author where when I'm reading his books, I am super engrossed in the book and I really enjoy the book. But as soon as I read it, I'm just like, okay, I'm done, So I enjoy reading him as I read him. But he's not a favorite, and he never really has, his books don't really have a very lasting impression on me. They just kind of like, in the moment I enjoy them, and they're very easy reads or fast reads. But they're quite dark. Truman Capote in Cold Blood, that was a really good one. Wow, that book is incredible. Fantastic. Tim O'Brien, I mean, I haven't read him, but I haven't read him since I was in school, basically. But I read all of his books about his time in Vietnam. So Things They Carried, Going After Cacciato was fantastic. If I Die in a Combat Zone, Box Me Up and Ship Me Home. So all of his Vietnam War books I read. George Orwell, I quite like as well. 1984, Animal Farm, I read those in school. Last month I read his Burmese Days. So he's an author that I'm now starting to come back to since having read him in school, and I'm looking forward to reading more of his books. Is he a favorite author? No, he's not quite there yet. But he's definitely an author that I'm interested to go back to over and over again. In terms of like favorite books from my country, since all the books I've read are fairly like, classic American books, everyone kind of knows them for the most part. So I thought I would also mention two books that are fairly recent, within like the past 5 years. Books that I really, really enjoyed, just to have a little variety to this video. So one book I read recently, and that came out I think in this past year, was My Dark Vanessa. I really, really enjoyed this one. It's basically just about a girl's relationship with her professor, where she has convinced herself it was a romantic relationship, but she's accepting the fact, based on recent news, that maybe she actually was abused, and she was sexually abused by this teacher. So this was a very, very good book. And then another book that I enjoyed was the Book of Essie, which I really enjoyed because I watched a lot of the Duggar Family on TLC, because there was just something fascinating about that family. It was just so. Basically, it's this man and woman who are in a sort of traditional. I don't know. They were a type of Lutheran, but like the obscure kind of Lutheran. And don't believe in birth control or things like that. So they had like 10 kids, and every year she was constantly pregnant on that show, and they had like so many kids, and they lived on this like he was a pastor, and they lived on this sort of like not a compound, but with that many kids in one home, I guess it kind of feels like a compound. But like the older kids had to take care of the younger kids and things like that. And it was just like very fascinating to watch because they were a very charismatic family, like super charismatic family. But there's got to be something behind it, there's got to be something a little weird. And so this book is kind of like, I mean, if you've watched the Duggar family and you're familiar with them, I mean, you basically know the plot of the book. But yeah, I mean, the book of Essie is just the same. It's Essie. She was raised in this same sort of type of family, just parents who didn't believe in birth control. She has a ton of siblings. And basically, she ends up pregnant. And she decides to enlist the help of a schoolmate to get her out of the situation and to find a way to sort of take back control of her situation. So this it's a very, very easy read, and the ending went in a direction that I was actually quite happy with, because it was good. It was good. So yeah, I quite enjoyed this one. Yeah, it was just like, go Essie. Yeah, I really like that. So those would be two more recent books from the US that I really enjoyed and would recommend. But when it comes to my favorite, that's still Lonesome Dove. So yeah, somehow I still managed to make this video long, even though it should have been short. But I just wanted to thank Laurent Macquart for tagging me. I'm not going to tag anyone because I don't know anyone. But if you'd like to do this video yourself and you want to link it in the comment, I'll definitely watch it. And it'd be great to see what countries you guys will talk about or discuss. And even if you don't do videos with yourself and you want to link me a video someone else did that I might like, yeah, definitely post that and I'll definitely watch it. So yeah, thank you, and I will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.